Hello, and welcome to another episode of Down and Dirty. Today we have with us Ankita Nandkeolyar. I got that last name correct. And I'm really excited to introduce her to you. She's someone who actually I've known for a long time, but professionally our paths have only crossed, I would say, in the last year and a half or so. So it's great to have you on the show, Ankita. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I thought I'll just start with a quick blurb of your accomplishments, which are so many, and yet I've tried to squeeze it here. So, you have a background in advertising, communications, and design, like the perfect mix for someone who has their own boutique design studio, branding studio. And she's worked with brands like Diesel, Max Mara, Levi's, a bunch of Indian brands as well. And this is all before she started Firebrand, which is her own business, her own boutique studio. Ankita, you started this in 2015, correct?
Okay.
And you have service clients in India, North America, and Europe. You work in sectors across F&B, FMCG, manufacturing. Basically, anyone who has any design needs that you can satisfy, you're in that space. And the most amazing thing is that there are so many awards. Like whenever we chat and I see the list of awards that you have been accumulating over the years, it's amazing. And I'm just going to call out just a couple of them, like India's Best Brand Design Studio, Best Packaging Design Project, Best Strategic Branding Project. And these are from Adobe, from Poolmag, from the Design India show. So congratulations. It's like every year your studio is getting recognized for the work that you do. And I think it's really important and interesting to have you on the show because you are the application of insights, right? Like once a company kind of figures out what they want to do and who they want to talk to, you help bring that to life through your packaging and your branding strategy, as well as the collateral that you develop. So hopefully we will have time to also see some of that stuff as we start our conversation. But once again, fantastic to have you here. And are you ready to get down and dirty with us?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. But yes, ready.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So what is that one project that you want to talk about today?
So this project is very close to my heart. It was one of the first few projects that we had taken up. Basically, it's in the pet food category. It was a startup, natural dog food is what they were launching. And it's called Wagon Love. So it's something that has seen the entire gamut of services. So I thought it'd be best to, bring that to the front.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to talk about this project with Wagon Love. So let's jump right into it. What is the project? What did you do for them that you think would be important for our listeners to learn more about?
So a couple had an idea, they were pet parents and they decided that, hey, India lacks a lot of good food options which are affordable for my pet. So why not come up with an option that will probably help people like us? So this was the genesis of the idea, started by a young couple, probably in their 30s. They were still, young pet parents, as they would call themselves, and really need to do the entire gamut of things. The only thing that they had, though, was the brand name, which was called Positive Pets Private Limited. And they were like, okay, now we just need to jump straight in. So really, when they came to us, it was just an idea. And there was absolutely nothing on the table at all. Like, what product are we going to launch exactly, apart from knowing the proposition is going to be natural dog food? So for them, like, we, of course, there was they worked with a lot of collaborating partners. So they had somebody who was taking care of the science. They had somebody who was taking care of the manufacturing. So what they were doing is they were manufacturing. They tied up with a manufacturing unit in Europe, where they were getting this natural dog food manufactured and they were shipping it to India, packaging it here, and that would be their entire approach to the market. So they came to us for branding. They're like, hey, this is the name. Now let's design and I think that's where really we stepped in, and we're like, hey, before you actually jump into designing, there is a lot of work that needs to go in. And unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, they were actually very open to the idea of research. Like, I think it's so important, and I'm sure you will, you'll understand this more than anyone else, that a lot of times you just jump into the market with your gut and you don't back it with a lot of data and facts. And that's where I think you sometimes go wrong. And I think if you've backed yourself with data research, you can make a more holistic offering to your end customer. So yes, for them, we started all the way from identifying who their target would be, to speaking to people, to like a bunch of things before we actually changed their name. We did their entire branding, packaging, and so on and so forth. So it was the entire thing, launched them in the market, helped them with like an all India launch as well. And this project lasted just about 2.5 years. So
Wow, that's
actually,
a really long project.
yes, yes. So it was supposed to be a 3 month or a 6 month project, but it just stretched over really long because of all the unforeseen things that like a couple thought of. See, they weren't really from the industry. So it
Hmm.
was just like, it wasn't really a level playing field. It was like, let's learn everything along the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And
And you
then,
were a strategic partner in that journey, so to speak.
yes, yes,
So,
absolutely.
okay, so let's
Sorry.
kind of get deeper into this stuff. So,
Yeah.
they had an idea of what they wanted to put out there in the market. They come to you to help with branding, and you tell them, "Hey, we've got to do some research before." So, in order to get this project completed, which means
Mhm.
brand name, branding, all of this stuff, how did you start? What were the inputs? You mentioned things like you spoke to a few pet
Yeah.
owners. Tell us more about that. Like, what fed into the
Mhm.
pipeline in order for you to ultimately deliver that brand book and that brand
Right.
experience?
Right, right. So first things first, I think we really wanted to understand what their product is all about, because in order to be able to see from their perspective, we need to be on the same page as them as to why they're bringing what the product is. So it wasn't so much only about, hey, is it going to be chicken? Is it going to be lamb? None of that. It was more about, why are you doing this? And what are your core drivers as founders? Once we had that in place, we started with our own research, which we split into three parts. The
Mhm.
first one was just getting down and dirty. Literally, we went out there. We went to all the possible touch points where the distribution, of this product would potentially be. So visiting different types of pet shops, where rescue studios, sorry, rescue NGOs, and all of that, and really wanted to understand what are the different brands, or what are the different food offerings that exists for these pet parents. So we had already identified a sort of a target audience. So how that worked was basically they pretty much had like a price point because of the entire economics of the way the product would sell. Based on that, we identified like a certain target segment, and we identified their personas then. So the starting point, like I was saying, we split it into three parts. The first one was really going out there and seeing what's in the market. So we did a lot of mystery shopping. We would pretend to be like pet parents and go and talk to shopkeepers, really get insights rather than just sitting on your desk doing this secondary research. Even if you do a little bit of primary research, no matter how big or small, it really goes a long way. So that was number one. Number two was, are all the competitors and the brands that started analyzing that. We're like, okay, what really works for them? Some of them were big brands, backed by Mars, like your Pedigrees and Royal Canines, who had all the budgets in the world. So, obviously we can't compete at that level. So we wanted to see what is the most important thing that will get the audience to convert to the product, or at least try it. That is the goal of branding. Just catch the attention so that the audience picks it up, and that's more than enough. Then the rest of it is done by the product. If the product is not good, there's only so much that branding can do for you. So our goal was very clear, that we want to make sure this is exciting enough to catch the attention so that someone picks it up, because the founders are very confident that if someone tries it, they will definitely go ahead and repeat purchase. So the second part was looking at what all these brands are doing. what is their core essence, what does their packaging look like, just doing a little bit of a visual communication audit. And then within that, we tried to identify trends and patterns. And one of the core things that we noticed was, pretty much every packaging looks the same. Like, they have a dog, they have benefits, and they have like, oh, it's going to like last you for so many days. And they had like these scientific names thrown in, like starter, maxi, and all of that.
Yeah.
So we saw that and we're like, okay, that is a potential gap, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, which led us to part 3 of the research, which is actual consumer research. So for this, we traveled across India. So we covered like many markets. We went to Delhi, Calcutta, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Pune. So these were 6, 7 cities that we went to. Now, in these cities, we had identified, interviews with different audience segments. So one was the pet parent themselves. The other was retailers. Third was vets. And fourth was trainers and breeders, who are like pretty much the main influencers of the decision of the food that you want to give your pet. So we just wanted to know who influences the decision. How do we break into the retail distribution? Does it even matter? Is it only money led? So we just wanted to get insights before we actually propose something to them. So yeah, based on all of this data, we sort of just put everything together and we drew insights, and then that led us to the next step of actually changing their name, coming up with an essence, and then of course translating that to packaging.
So, for someone who is, I mean, we just established that you have your own branding studio, right? That does strategy and design.
Right.
Why would a studio like this care about what the retail distribution channels are like, right? When it comes to branding, why should somebody care? Unless you're the business owner, in which case, yes, you're going to have your business plan in place to understand how am I going to distribute, right? But at a branding level, how could that be important?
So, branding or design is actually problem solving. Like we always approach it from like a problem that you're trying to solve. So in this case, the problem that we're trying to solve is it's very crowded and cluttered. How do we break into this cluttered market space? And one of the key areas that our design is going to live in is the retail channels. So if you ignore that completely, you don't know where your design is going to live. So how can you come up with something that could work for that channel? So I don't know if that answers your question. But, it's not just about making something look visually good. It's about making sure it works for the channel. And also, a lot of times, design is also a lot about the emotions of people. So you have to see what's the pulse of the market. Like, a lot of sale is made not only because you're getting like great margins, or, this brand is paying you a lot. A lot of sale is also made because there are certain sentiments that are really, met with, brands go out of their way to do these softer things. So just that was the whole idea that, how do we do something that is not just visual design? I mean, that is a part of branding, but there's so much more to that. So that's the reason why we wanted to make sure nothing is left out.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And this is also why you started by saying you pushed for research, because unless you actually first understand how crowded the space is, for example, by actually living it, observing it, witnessing it, you wouldn't be able to understand where the brand's competitive edge could lie.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's why you did it. And of course, hearing words like audience segmentation and personas, that's like music to my ears, because that's the kind of stuff that I very strongly, just like you, believe that all brands, especially startups, need to pay attention to and put some energy towards, because it's just a stronger starting point. Absolutely. And that's it. Like where it ends up, we don't know, but at least you start from a better place, having that information. Okay, so you did your research. You came back to the table and to the drawing board and said, okay, this is what's out there, right? Across these different audience segments. And what happened next? So let's talk about the operations of this project, right? How many
Mhm.
people, let's start with how many people did you need to even start this exercise of building the brand now?
Mhm. So you're talking about the team?
Yes, your team, in order to now start working on this brand's design and strategy.
Right. So Firebrand is actually a very niche boutique studio. And we are actually proud of the fact that we are lean and we literally everyone wears multiple hats. And I think that's what really brings the best of ideas. So when we were actually working, and it's something that I'm actually proud of, that we did this entire thing. We were not more than four people doing this entire exercise. And also, I think the other key that lies, or what really helped us strengthen this, was finding the right kind of collaborators. So, when our research, we did two forms of research. One was qualitative, which is what we did. So, we literally traveled to these cities, met these families and these different personas and stakeholders. But we also had another research agency that helped us gather a lot of quantitative data,
Hmm.
which was on ground. So those samples ran into 2,000, 3,000 people. So for those reasons, we collaborated with the right partners. But the qualitative strategic aspect is something that our team did. So back then, it was just four people.
Yeah.
Now, of course, this was in 2016.
Right. So you had four people, and what were their roles? Like, what were they? I know they wore multiple hats, but what were the moving parts of this project? I guess is what I'm saying. What I'm
Right.
asking.
So I think one was actually data gathering,
Hmm.
like just going out there, and this was mainly done by me and another team member,
Yeah.
and we would just go out there, whether it's to pretending to be buyers or really
Yeah.
going to figure out what's happening out there. So you always need two people to do this. Actually, you can even do it by yourself, but there were two of us. The second aspect was gathering all the data and actually putting it in these big Excel sheets. We didn't have a Pucho at that time, otherwise probably we would have taken your help for this
We still use better versions of Excel sheets, but we
entire.
still need it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just dumping all the data. So
Yeah.
somebody was helping us crunch these
Yeah.
numbers, like, okay, so many people sort of said this, and this
Yes.
was the overall insight. And of course, we had a designer, like a design person who would then come in and give us insights. So it was pretty much me who was doing
Yeah.
like the strategy part, and of course, a designer and two people to support the research aspect.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is most of the people who have spoken to who have launched products in the marketplace, even if they are big brands that are launching a new product for a specific client, the team's actually not big at all, right? And I think there's power to that, as you said, because you actually don't need a
Absolutely.
lot of people to make things happen as long as they're experts or able to do their job in that
Yes.
in that collaborative space. Like, you do this, you do this, you do this, and they do it well. You don't need a lot of people to implement this stuff.
Yeah, and
So
it's also easy to implement and ideate. You don't
yeah.
have like 100 people to run an idea by. It's like, do you agree? Do you agree? Bam, it's done. It's like
Yeah.
quicker, like the more lean you are.
Yeah. So, okay, so you had this team set in place. Now, I know you said the project actually ran for 2 years, right? Almost.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you were first setting up let's just talk about the first big milestone in branding. What was the first big milestone that you had to deliver for the client, and what was that timeline like?
So first one was research insights. So
Huh.
gathering everything that's in the market, identifying the positioning, white space, all of that, which took us about 3 months.
Okay.
And then we moved it to, we identified an essence for the brand, from where we moved the actual design, because the essence sort of informs the design.
Correct.
So that took about 2.5 months.
Okay.
But after that, once we had the concept and the detailing in place of the design, the real trouble starts when you actually go out there, get vendors, getting the packaging right, all of those things, structural changes, those things do take time. And of course, so that's why it's stretched really long. But I think just if you look at core research, 3.5 months is a good timeline. And if you look at branding, like from positioning to about design, the concept design about 2 months, and then around a month to detail out everything. So I would say a good time period for branding would be about 6 months. That would be
Yeah.
ideal. But a lot of times clients don't have that kind of time, so
Yeah.
they come back and they're like, okay, how do we do this in 3 months? And then, you get in
Yeah.
more resources and figure that.
Yeah. And also, to keep in mind, like the 6 month timeline that you're giving involves 3 months of research, which is
Yeah.
going to help the business beyond branding, right? Like once you understood, it's going to
Yes.
help you with even your marketing channels, right? It's going to tell you where these guys are hanging out, right? It's going to help you with your communication language because you spoke to them. So you probably know the language that should go up on your web page, on the first page versus the second page, and what you need to prioritize. So I think that the research should just be a sunk cost for any business. It should be something that just has to go in. And the design, from what I'm hearing you say, took about 3 months to 2 months plus one to first put something out there and make some tweaks. And of course, then it's an iterative process, right? As you're saying, you constantly making changes, getting feedback. Okay, so you're looking at let's say a 6 month launch, at least market ready design launch, right? From the time you have an idea till you actually see the output,
Right.
the first iteration at least. So, all right, so we have the timeline. And what would be the kind of budgets that you would recommend someone who is listening to this, who's a D2C founder wanting to enlist the help of a branding service? Leaving research aside for a second and just talking about branding, or maybe you'll need to club it together because your services are combined. But roughly, what kind of ticket size are we looking at?
So that really varies because it really depends on the different studios that you go to. So a lot of startup founders even work with freelancers, for example. So that becomes really, really affordable. Then you have like the branding agencies, then you have digital agencies. So it really depends on what tier that you're going into. But I would, again, just what you mentioned about research, I would say that branding is literally the way you're going to introduce yourself. So it should also be considered, as I always tell my clients, that it's not a cost. I think it's an investment that you're making in your business.
That's
So
a good
look at it
nuance.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really is scope dependent, resource dependent. So it's going to be very tough for me to throw in a number here. But I think, if I can probably say in terms of overall, when you're planning, you should easily keep about 5 to 8 lakhs aside for just the branding part of it, because that is, and again, I'm just throwing in this number, so please
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
hold me
yeah.
by it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes it's a very extensive packaging project where there are many SKUs. So of
Right.
course, the costs go up.
Yeah.
But just purely branding, I would say that is at least something good that you should keep aside for planning the business.
Right, right. And you're gonna stick with this for some time at least till you get another round of funding or some cash infusion because of revenues, whatever capacity. But yes, so that seems about right, even just based on my experience working with brand agencies and working with marketers, working with research, being in the research space. So those numbers actually make sense. And this is also staggered over a period of time, right? You're not coughing this up in month one.
To 5 months, yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So so you got this project up and running. What were some of the key tools that someone who may want to just start this in a very, very lean fashion, which means even before they want to go to a branding agency, they want to just start testing some ideas. Let's say they've done some ground research, talked to 5, 7 potential customers, gotten some sense of their pain points, hopefully a little more than that, but let's say they're just starting out. What are some tools you would recommend that they could use just to kickstart the process themselves?
So, to be honest, I'm not too sure if there is a a certain tool that you can use, but I think the most powerful tool is like your notebook and your pen. Like just having all your ideas really brought together in the most analog way is something that I am a big fan of. But yeah, when it comes to getting, I don't know how equipped everyone will be with the design softwares, but so I really don't want to touch upon that. So I think for design, you will probably need some professional help. But
What
yeah, if
tools
you
do
ask
you
me for
use?
a tool,
No. Let's
I just
rephrase that. What tools do I
okay.
mean? What does Firebrand use in order to do its design?
So we actually use design softwares like the Adobe series of softwares. So right from your Illustrator to your Photoshops, all of that. Then we have Procreate, which is meant for illustrating. Then you have Figma and other things for website design. So that's how we work. But personally, I don't use too many tools. I just use my notebook, write down my thoughts, and then it's about how do we, and that's true of even any designer, right? Like they sketch it out and then it's out there digitized.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Um,
tools apart from that, I'm not sure if there's anything specific that yeah.
yeah. There is. I mean, of course, you have. You know, I don't want to say beginner tools, but if you are a beginner, there are also things like Canva, right? Like you can just start playing with it, put some colors on
Yeah.
there. It's probably not strategically driven. It's not professionally done because this is why you work with professional agencies when you want to up your game. But there are spaces where you can start toying with the visual aesthetic and kind of see where that goes, or perhaps even just market test that, right? Like put some colors out there and say, listen, which one looks better for you? But I guess that's the wrong way of doing. It's not about the
Yeah.
colors, it's deeper than that, right?
Yeah, I think it is. And probably in certain places, you should not ask people what they want because we actually burnt our fingers once for an ice cream brand. We thought, let's find out what color appeals to people the most. And we got the most random choices. Like, we got colors like purple, which is not really very edible. We got a lot of reds and maroons, which is already a very crowded market. So I think for a lot of these decisions, you need to probably use your own ability. But yeah, of course. So I would definitely stay away from involving a lot of people in the research of design because that is something that's a little skill based. Canva as a tool is great for F&B, like, if you're running a restaurant or, you are, you constantly need to create a lot of social media posts. Of course, that gives you the ease of doing that. But again, when it comes to actually creating your identity, I'm not too sure if you can really get that on a Canva,
Right.
but
Actually,
definitely for social media.
right. So this is actually a good segue. Let's talk about the project itself that you worked on. I know you have some things that some visuals that you want to share, and maybe that can help us understand the thought process that went into the visual aesthetic.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so maybe I'll just share my screen and
Yeah.
just let me know once you can see it.
Yes.
So yeah, just touching back on. Just give me a second. I'm
Sure.
just gonna have a. Yeah. So I'm just gonna touch back a little bit on the research part, like the different things that we did and all of that, like just a visual collage of people we met. So yeah, this was like a little bit of the mystery shopping, going into the different retail outlets, and what we got from here is that the distribution channel is very disorganized. Like you don't have very fancy, not all the time do you have fancy shelves. Like it's all over the place. And these were some of the competitors that we looked at. So you see how cluttered. So your question about retailers, like what was the point of going to a retail outlet? This is the reason why, because you get to see, okay, which brands are dominant, which colors are dominant. Apparently, no other pet food brand can use this yellow because Pedigree owns it. Like, it's literally
Wow. You
it's
can do
literally
that?
Yes, you can trade colors also, right? So yeah, like Coke and their red, I think it's a very specific red. Like, they just
There are brands that can own colors.
yes. Yeah, and here basically if you see on the packaging, there's a visual of a dog. It's obviously very emotive. It sort of makes you relate to it. And there are certain benefits and features of the food, pretty much. So when we saw this, we were like, hey, why not make packaging that breaks this clutter? Like, everybody has a certain style of doing it, and probably that works. It's something that's working for the mass audience. But since we were going for a slightly more urban population, young couples with high disposable income who are delaying having kids because they have pets, so that was the mindset that we were tapping into, a little more global in their approach, more creative and design friendly. So what's going to appeal to this mindset? So we looked at this market, and of course, these were the different people we spoke to. So, across the cities, the different dogs we met, we tried to look at, okay, where does this dog live through the day? And in fact, one of the most interesting insights, which we actually applied, was found through this. So we actually saw like a feeding exercise of a dog, like, how through the day they are fed. And one of the pet parent mentioned, like, she opened this big jar and she's like taking out some stuff, and she's like, oh, I have to keep it in this jar because if I open the packet, it gets rancid very fast because of its interaction with oxygen, which gave us like a little, it was like a eureka moment where, like, if we have like a 4 5 kg bag, why not have smaller bags inside, which can just be a one-time feed. So then pet parents don't have to worry about getting another dabba and storing it. And we actually applied that in our packaging design. So I think this you can only get to if you are out there looking at observing what's happening around. And of course, the vet clinics. We also went to like a hostel and rescue homes just to see what kind of brands are sponsoring them, what's happening there, what's the conversation really going on over here. So after all of this, there was a very strong white space that we identified, which was basically something that's emotive and speaking directly to the customer. So a lot of it is influenced by vets and doctors and breeders and trainers. We're like, let's create a brand that will speak directly to the pet parent. And that's what led us to one of the most basic insight, which was missed by a lot of brands back then, which is about how a pet is a part of your family. And it's no more, about keeping your dog healthy or about giving it the best. It's more about that family feeling. How do we really bring that out? So we sort of changed the name to Wag and Love, which basically shows like an exchange of love and connection between the dog and the pet parent. And also, the core essence that we based this entire brand on was just a simple statement which went like, because family deserves the best. So it was something that no other dog food brand had done at that time. Also, what we did, Tapsi, we didn't want to go a very photographic way because, as you saw on the slide before, that it was very cluttered. There were a lot of images, a lot of colors. So we thought, okay, why not, based on the age group, which was then corresponding with the type of food, why not we create like these interesting illustrations, which is more new age, more modern. It's something that no other brand can take away. Like, I can always put another dog's face, but can I replicate an illustration like this? So it becomes a lot more ownable. So if you look at the puppy product, it's soft colors, and the whole scenario was built around welcoming a puppy home. So what is that feeling? So we tried to bring that out. Then for the adult food, we had this energetic colors and, trying to show a family of four, having a good time. And for an all age group product, which is the salmon relish, we tried to show like a little bit of exchange of energy and, playfulness coming in. Also, another insight was that people tend to relate to colors when they're buying for the age category. So we wanted to make sure that the puppy food is like a certain color, adult is a different color, and the third is a different color. So it becomes like a repeat for the people who are buying it as well. Also here we, talking about collaborations. So, we wanted a very specific style of illustration. So we collaborated with illustrator based in Poland. And we had him, like we had the storyboarding, we had a lot of these discussions. So these are these additional timelines, that come in that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
probably
yeah.
think of. And we got this perfect illustration. And then this is how it really translated into design. So smaller nuances, like we changed the name from maxi starter food, weaning product to more human names like puppy bloom, adult vigor, and then adding, of course, giving away information, but also adding like these little snippets. So we made it look so creative and designer and clutter breaking that someone who's passing by will look at it, probably pick it up and be interested. And that's it. Our job is done. Another thing that we did was, because this was a slightly more expensive product, we got these trial tins, because we realized that pet parents love to store little things. Actually, that's for parents in general, right? Like it's a very Indian thing, I would say, where you like to use these boxes to store stuff. So we created these really beautiful looking tins, which you can like use for multi-purpose usage.
Yeah.
So that increased a lot of trials. And then I guess once people tried the product, they would open up and invest in like a 3.5, 4.5 kg bag. And yeah, this is how basically the different touch points we did, like little kiosks in different malls, and yeah, just the works. But yeah, I don't know if that
This is,
makes
yeah, no, this is fantastic. I was just thinking that if my daughter, who's 4.5, if Yodi had to go into a pet store with me because we have a dog and see this brand and see these images, she's gonna want to buy this packet because first of all, she loves pink.
okay,
and
great,
and
wonderful.
secondly, it is so family friendly, right?
Yeah,
It's not, she's not just seeing the picture of a dog, a generic dog,
yeah.
but there's so much happening. And there's such a story just there on the image that I can see its instant appeal compared to other brands that are standing out. So I love it. I love what I'm seeing.
Right. And also, since you mentioned about the dog, now obviously these guys are a startup, they don't have unlimited budgets. So
Yeah.
a lot of brands do show different breeds, because it obviously makes sense. If I have a pug, I'll probably relate to the pug image.
Mhm.
But we didn't have the luxury to have so many bags printed.
Yeah.
So keeping that practicality in mind, also, we chose an illustrative route where we just show an emotion which does not keep adding to our costs, for photography and for other things. So in that perspective, this worked out, as well.
That's great. So let me ask you some follow-up questions. So you did this, you know, it looks great, but again, I mean, I know it looks great because you had this long relationship with this brand that obviously entrusted you with helping them go to market, not just design and strategize at the branding level. But what are some lessons learned along the way in the
Mhm.
process from research to actual implementation? Is there anything that you would have or would do differently now or do differently now based on this project from a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons is, of course, costs are very, very important.
Yeah.
But it's like literally when you make an investment, uh, what I noticed in this project was we had wonderful research, branding, but the marketing costs were slashed quite a bit. So
Hmm.
the end output sometimes of what you've designed or what you had envisioned for the brand sort of falls flat. So
Hmm.
when you're planning your entire budget, just ensure that you've allocated the right funds, right from research to branding to marketing. Because a lot of times entrepreneurs, and I've noticed this especially for startups, by the time they're done with their branding, they've run out of funds and they're like, you know what, now let's just allocate a 10,000 spend on social media. Let's do images on our own. So really
Hmm.
invest that. So I feel this is where Wagon Love was, it fell short a little bit, I would say, because there wasn't a lot of great content that was created to finally reach the audience. It was just placed in shelves, a lot of point of sale collateral. But I think that is something that could have been done differently. The second thing is always manufacture your packaging in India. or at least when where you're able to sort of be involved a little bit, because we had because again of cost constraints, and this I'm talking about 2017 by the time we went in for production. There's a really famous place in Mumbai, Thane, that does like great packaging stuff, but their cost was a little more than what was coming from China. So the first lot that came to us was horrific, because and also you can't go and see the sample test, so you just have to rely on pictures and then you just approve it on that. And then finally when it came to us, they were sitting with like some 2, 3, 4,000 bags, which
No.
did not look like the color at all. And
Oh
yeah,
my God.
so that was a really big learning. They were almost transparent, because
Wow.
so it sort of did hinder a little bit. So,
Yeah.
if you see that we even on the launch collateral, then we started creating renders and we started using it like that. But yeah, so this was a big, just be involved. Like, don't just sign up on stuff just because it's cheaper. Like, it's okay if it's a little more, but always look at the output finally.
And so would you be comfortable sharing the name of this packaging company that you
Yeah,
like so
actually,
much?
it can. So they have a very complicated name. It got taken over by a Swedish company. Probably I can share it with you after our call. But they're based in Thane, and I remember seeing their setup. It was beautiful, very nice. They do like manufacturing bags for all your FMCG brands.
Okay.
But yeah, finding a vendor is something that is very critical, I think.
Right, right.
Even for us, like we don't really get into vendor management, nor do we scout for vendors, because it always comes down to the cost, which is more of a decision that the entrepreneur needs to take. So I feel sometimes all the work falls flat because the vendor is not good. So I think that's something you should always keep in mind.
I remember doing a podcast with Mansi Zaveri, who was talking about, her this initiative of starting podcasts. And anyhow, one of the things she said that really stuck with me, which I think is also something you're saying right now, is don't think that the journey ends at the product, which in her case was creating podcasts, right? She's like, the
Mm.
work only begins then, because then you have to think about the distribution channel. Like, how is this going
Oh,
to
yeah.
go out there into the world? Which, in the case of, pet food or FMCG or F&B or anything, is your marketing channel, right? Like, where is
Mm.
it? How are you putting it out there? Who are the vendors or the networks who are going to promote it or shelve it or show it? And if you don't think about that, then you haven't closed the loop yet, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
that
Yeah,
completely.
absolutely. And we work with so many so many different entrepreneurs. A lot of times we know that they're great at product, but they're not good at marketing. And I think that's where you need to fill in the gap and you need to budget for. And I also highly recommend that if there's something that you're not comfortable with, you don't have to do it yourself. Get help, get people to get experts. If you can't afford the best agency, go for somebody who is probably going to fit into your budget, but don't try to do it all yourself, because something's going to give and then it's going to be too late for you to roll back and then change everything. So
Right, right.
yeah.
Okay, totally makes sense. Ankita, we're almost done with this podcast. And I just have the rapid fire section for you. Are you
Okay.
ready for 4 very quick questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
First one is a person who inspires you.
So this is a very difficult one. Um, I actually look for inspiration in everybody around me, because there are many people, whether it's your colleague. I know this is not really rapid fire,
It's okay.
but or an entrepreneur, or people who you meet on an everyday basis. There's inspiration to look at in everyone. I don't know if this really makes
Okay.
any
No, no, no.
sense.
It's totally fine. There's no right or wrong. This is whatever you want to say. Okay. A book or a podcast that you're into right now.
So, a podcast that is great, and I would recommend anyone who wants to listen to design, is Design Matters by Debbie Millman.
Mhm.
There's a lot of conversation around design that you can definitely, yeah, listen to.
Okay. All right. Which is your favorite brand? And we don't want biased
Right
answers.
now,
A brand that you've worked with or worked for, we won't include any of those. It has to be a personal favorite brand. Yes.
so they change over time,
Yeah.
but the one that I'm like totally hooked on to
Yeah.
is Forest Essentials. I've been it's a proudly homegrown Indian brand.
Yeah.
They attract me, even though I work in this industry. I know that a lot of it is gimmicky, and a lot of it is just to attract. But I think they've done a fab job with their experience, everything. So yeah, Forest Essentials, and another one would be Theobroma. I know it's like again an Indian homegrown brand
Yeah.
that has just nailed it with their experience in branding and of course product. So yeah, these two brands I would say right now.
Okay.
Right now.
Yeah. I'll ask you this question again in 6 months. All right. So what do you wish you had done differently when you were 20 or in your 20s?
I think I would have worked a little less. I would have taken a little more time to just do silly things, because I think we're always in some form of a like we need to get to this destination, to this level, to you're always churning, and you're always. So I started working when I was like 18, and I've
Mm.
never really taken a break. So I would tell younger people that enjoy each phase of your life the way it is, because you're going to be working for the rest of your life. So yeah, that's one thing I would say. Just chill out a little bit.
Yeah, sounds like something an overachiever would say.
Oh no, 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 not at all.
I'm just pulling your leg. I'm just pulling your leg. It is really impressive that you've been at this since you were 18. And just, and this is why you're winning awards now, right? Like you have, no matter what you experience, I think, you kind of collect all of this over time and you don't know how it's applied. You don't know where it surfaces again, but here you are with your own studio and some amazing work to show for it. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and the project.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, Tapsi.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.